everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how to make the crewmate, the pet, and the body from Among Us out of gumpaste. Okay, just like always, if there's any tools or supplies you need that you see me use, if you check the link in the description below, it should be able to help you out. Alright, we're going to start with our Among Us characters here, making the red crewmate. So I made this giant pill, basically, of red gum paste, nice and round and oval, and I'm cutting a wedge right out of the center. It wasn't as even of a cut as it should have been, so, make yours a little more even, but it still is a cut with a wedge taken out of the center. So that's going to become the body and the two legs. So I'm now trying to kind of smooth off the legs a little bit, make that cut that I made on either leg a little more round and gentle. And I'm trying to smooth off the center because I kind of tore it. I wasn't cutting very gently, I gotta admit. And I'm making the legs more even in length and just round them off. Make them nice and round. Round, round, round is all you gotta do. I'm taking a lollipop stick and shoving it up the one leg, and later on I did end up putting one up the other leg as well. I started out not doing it that way because I was hoping to avoid it, but it turned out to be necessary, so I'd recommend just go ahead and, do it in the beginning, get it over with. Alright, now I took a piece of black gum paste, rolled it out nice and flat and thin, and cut a square out of it. This is going to become the outline to the visor. I took my knife and cut off the corners to make it a little more round as well, and now I'm using this very light blue color here. It's kind of thick, and I'm just cutting it to fit into the black so the black will frame it. And even though the sides are really, sharp and cut off there, you can see now I'm using my fingers to just press down on the sides to kind of smooth it over. So now it's more like a rounded kind of a rectangle bubble glass, I guess, for the face mask of the crewmate. And I'm just kind of taking off the sharp corners on the edges there. And as long as it matches up and you have a nice even thickness around the black, then go ahead and put the two together with a little bit of water. Once they are put together and you're happy with it, stick it right onto your little crewmate, right in the pretty much the middle of his torso part of his body. He really doesn't have a lot of limbs or anything going on. It's mostly just head and legs. This rectangle, nice and thick, rounded off, nice and simple, right? Is going to be his backpack, so make sure it's just a good size, that it fills up most of his body. So you want it to start right about his head and go all the way down to where his legs begin. I'm just smoothing the black around the mask a little bit using the handle of my paintbrush. It was just a little rough. Alright, that little white Tic Tac that I just flattened there is just white gum paste. Made it nice and long. Put it on top of the lens there because it has that reflection that they all have there. So he's looking good. He's actually done. Like, super easy. I'm now going to show you how to make the brainslug pet. I took some green. I have it kind of mushed out into four corners with a lump in the center there. I'm going to separate the four corners a little bit, but still leave it kind of wiggly. And I'm going to round off a kind of a ball on the top, see, like that. So now you've got the head and the body of your little brain slug. I'm using my ball tool to hollow out the head there a little bit. I'm going to put his big old giant eyeball in there. A little bit of water, stick it in there, nice white ball of gum paste. And I'm going to add his little pupil. It's a light brown color, just a circle that I pressed in. I'm going to outline now his eyeball with some black gum paste. I rolled it, as you saw, nice and thin and long and skinny. Just wrap it around, pinch off or cut off any that doesn't fit anymore. Smooth it off, and there you go. And now I'm taking one last little piece of that same black that I rolled for his eye, cut a small piece and bend it forward a little bit, stick it on top of his head for his antenna. And yeah, now your crewmate has his little pet. Alright, last thing I'm going to show you is how to make a body. We're going to start just like we did with the red crewmate. Going to have your giant purple pill or whatever color you want to use. Cut a section out in the center, round it off with your finger or whatever you got going on. Round the legs off, make them nice and round, 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 just like before. Round off the bottoms, whatever you got to do. I pressed it down a little bit to make it a little more flat, just because I felt like it looked better that way. Make sure your angles are nice and gentle, and then cut him in half. So you only need a little bit of the body and the legs. Now that center piece that's cut out, I'm going to just take that black there. I was just getting a feel for it. You'll see what I do with it. I'm using my end of the rolling pin to kind of hollow it out a little bit. And then I'm putting that black piece of gum paste in there, and using my ball tool, I'm spreading it out and smoothing it out. Because the inside of the body is just black. It's just black with a giant bone sticking out. So that piece of lollipop stick that I'm using there is going to become my bone. So I took some white gum paste and roll it around the stem of the lollipop stick. And as you can see, I left kind of like a big ball at the end of it. I'm pulling and pinching it around the long part of the stick there, and all that extra I'm using a knife to cut away, but I still have that big ball at the end. So I'm just working on the idea of the long skinny bone with the rounded double part at the end. So I cut off the top of the ball that I had there, smooth and round it off a little bit. I'm using the back of my blade to separate it in the center to make it look like a cartoon bone. And yeah, there you go. Just finish rounding it off, smooth it off, stick it in. Look at that. Like, how good do they look, right? So, final touch now on our body. I'm just taking some more of the purple. I have it at a, decent thickness there that it matches up well to the body, I think. Kind of rolling it out, rounding it off a little bit, and that is going to become the backpack on my body. So once I get it all nice and rounded on the one end, kind of flat on the other end, stick it in place, a little bit of water, and there you go. Now you got your body. All right, we're going to move on now to the cake itself. I baked a cake. It's the one that I made is just a small one. It's a 6-inch. It was 3 tiers, or 3 layers, I should say, not tiers. 3 layers. And I am going to cover the whole darn thing with a nice layer of gray fondant. And once you lay it over the cake, you might have to adjust a little bit, and that is fine. Make sure it's nice and even on all the sides, or at least even enough that it covers all the sides. And I am just flattening it down against the cake using my hand. I kind of, like you can see me, I sort of lift up on the bottom edge and then press down, so kind of like tucking it in. That helps avoid those wrinkles that you can end up with in your cake fondant that make it look kind of not so nice, and then you have to go and figure out how to cover it. Okay, so once you get it all tucked in, all smoothed down on the sides, then I usually use my pizza cutter to do this part, but it broke. Yeah, the little thing that held the wheel in just popped right off, and so now I don't have a pizza cutter anymore. So I use my little tool, I don't know what it is, my little cutting tool, ribbon tool, I think it is. Whatever it is, I use that. I use my paddles to smooth it, and now I am moving on. I'm going to start by making the little walkway on top of the cake. I tried to make it look like one of the rooms from the game Among Us, so I was trying to make it look more mechanical, hence all the grays. And I found one picture that I liked, and it had kind of like this tile sort of walkway thing. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I got my squares. I put them in a line kind of down the middle of the cake. I was leaving a little bit of room because you'll see. And I'm using my knife blade now to make some imprints to make it more look, I don't know, corrugated, striated, whatever the word is, lined. Make it look more lined. I'm adding a final one there that I used a half of a circle and a half of a square because I'm trying to get it up to the edge of my cake and it's rounded off. And in the picture I was looking at, that's how it finished. It kind of like went into the room and then ended on a rounded tile. So that's what I did. And I'm going to put my little lines in it just like the other ones. There you go. Nice, right? Okay, now I'm taking this kind of a purpley pink color and I'm using my ribbon tool there to roll out a nice thin long stripe. This is gum paste, by the way. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention I went back to gum paste. The fondant's covering the cake, but the rest is gum paste. And I am wrapping it all around my little walkway to kind of outline it. But I'm going to hook a bend there and make it turn out. And you're going to see why in a moment, but I'm going to kind of outline like a little rectangle area. And that is where I am going to put a vent. But I'm not going to do it yet, so I'm going to just keep on finishing my little outline here. And I'm using my knife to try to make my edges a little straighter, make it look a little neater, and trim off all the extra. So there you go, already looking good, right? Okay, here comes our vent itself. I've got a bit of white gum paste that I rolled out nice and thin, made it into a rectangle, took some black, rolled out really thin, and cut it into long little stripes of rectangle. And I'm just putting 3 of them, as you can see, across the length of my white just to make it look more like it did in the picture. Make it look more like a vent. Okay, now this is going to be my backdrop. It is gum paste. It is a dark gray. It's kind of thick. As you can see, I'm using my wooden stirring sticks there to measure the thickness. And I don't know if you noticed, but I got some new ones. That's right, moving up in the world. Fancy living going on over here, right? So I am taking that gray and I'm going to cut out a big old, it's more of a rectangle than a square, because I want to have like at least half of it against the back side of the cake and some of it sticking up. So make sure if you do decide to follow this, you leave it a little on the thicker side. It's got to be strong enough to support itself and to have enough space to stick to the cake and be supported. So yeah, there you go. I'm taking some black gum paste, rolling it out, and using my little ribbon tool thing there again to just make some outlining for it. So as you can see, took my pieces of black, add a little water to my gum paste, and then just trimmed out the rectangle. I did it all the way around except for the bottom because you're not going to see the bottom anyway. It's going to be behind the cake. And also I moved it onto a paper towel just so it was easier to handle and move and so it would start to dry a bit. I put a little bit across the top of black as well just because it kind of looked weird from the top view to look down on top of it and see the gray. So just kind of finish it off a bit. This is some more gum paste. This is a dark gray again. I rolled it out super thin as you can see, and I'm just making 2 thick stripes. There's going to be one that goes across the top, and then there's going to be a lighter one in the middle, and then that darker one on the bottom. And speaking of lighter one, there it is. I just took some of the gray gum paste and added white to it to make it lighter. I just wanted it to stand out because that's where the little control panels were going to be on my background. So I made it thicker as well. Just lay it in there, trim off the extra, tuck in the bottom edge there, and then lay my bottom piece on. There you go. See that? We already got our backdrop going already. I'm using my knife blade to make an imprint down the center just to separate the two because that's how it looked in the picture that I found. And I'm trying to straighten it out a little bit with my knife. That was that attempt there. All right, this is some more black. I made 2 different size squares as you can see. I'm going to trim them down a little bit because it was a little bit too big for the light gray stripe that I put on there. And those are going to be my 2 panels, my 2, I don't know, panels. One looks like it's Wi-Fi and one looks like it's power or something. I don't know. So I'm just sticking them in there. The bigger one, it's actually the same width. The one is just longer than the other. And the longer one I put on the left with the orange little stripe coming out of it. The one on the right is a smaller one. As you can see, I put a light gray square in it. The one on the left, I'm putting a white square in it. And I'm doing it just so that enough of the black shows behind it just to kind of frame and outline it. Now I'm adding some little thin pieces of black to that one on the right there to make kind of like the Wi-Fi signal like I mentioned. I just curved a little, stuck 3 pieces on with a little bit of water, called it good. I'm using my black edible food coloring marker to draw in some lines on the white one. Kind of like a pyramid, you know, or a triangle. You want to start out thin in the center and kind of flare out to the sides. It just represented what I saw in the picture, so that's why I did it like that. Here's some more black, just outlining that gray, light gray panel there, because it just looked better that way, and it was that way in the picture. It's like they know what they're doing, so maybe I should copy it, right? So I straighten it out, trim it off, looking good, and that's it. Like, it's not a lot. It's really not a lot. So now I took my panel, add some water to it, as you can see, and then I'm pressing it onto the back of my cake. And this is where I was saying before that it's got to be thick enough and kind of starting to dry so that it's firm and stiff enough to hold its place and to not lose its shape. And now for my final piece of flair, get that reference, anybody? That I'm going to add to my cake. I have this spiky thing. I just went, as you can see, just made little triangle slashes all over it. I did it in light pink, I did it in red, and I made the red bigger than the pink. Lay the one over top of the other, add a little bit of water to wherever you need to make sure they stick together nicely. And that's going to be like that, the alert, you know, that comes across the screen when you play the game. Body found, meeting called, whatever. So I'm sticking that all across the front of my cake with a little bit of water. Getting my figures that I made from earlier in the video, sticking them in place, and ba-bam! You got your awesome Among Us cake. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because it helps me out. I've got a ton of other videos out there, so please check them out. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.